Adam Kinzinger has taken some bold positions that don't always sit well with his party. He's taken plenty of heat for that, yet his policy positions cannot be mistaken for anything other than Republican. Illinois Congressman Adam Kinzinger joins us for a conversation this morning. Thanks so much for making the time, Congressman.
Yeah, you bet. Good to be with you.
Let's start with immigration. There's been a lot of finger pointing about what's happening at the southern border with Mexico now and over the last few years. But this has certainly been a problem, if not a crisis, for decades. The House recently adopted the American Dream and Promise Act, as well as the Farm Workforce Modernization Act. Each would provide a path to American citizenship for dreamers and farm workers, respectively. I checked the congressional record. It indicated you didn't cast a vote on either of these. First of all, why were you out of town? And can you clarify your position on these pieces of legislation?
Yeah, I would have been supportive of them. I was on military duty and can't cast a vote and during that. So unfortunately, that week we were supposed to be out, so I can schedule the duty then, and then they changed it. But look, I think the bottom line is we need to fix immigration, and even though I'm supportive of these efforts, I think we need to actually do it in a bigger way. And I think we need actual comprehensive immigration reform, and that's going to start and include real verifiable border security, and then the recognition that, you know, those that are here illegally, especially those that have been here a while, it's unrealistic to think they're all going to be deported. We need to put them in a pathway to legalization, maybe ultimately citizenship in the back of the line, and just get this fixed for the next generation. But, you know, both sides kind of hold on to their really important thing and are unwilling to engage in real conversation on it. And so we're going to continue kind of in this piecemeal by piecemeal thing.
Yeah, we are seeing this piecemeal method because that's where it seems like you're more likely to accomplish things, because every time there is a big bill like you're suggesting, it gets shot down. How do you get beyond that?
Well, I mean, that's ultimately the question in politics right now, is how do we get beyond people needing to accept something as perfect before they're willing to vote for it, or somebody always seeing an opportunity to just go after the other side of the aisle and attack. And unfortunately, with the House so close as it is, and, you know, the political landscape, frankly, so close as it is, it's just always thinking about the next election. So I think, you know, look, we've got to elect people and demand better of people to actually go to D.C. or Springfield or to the city council and solve problems and not just go out to make political points. But that's going to take some time. I'm optimistic we'll get there. But right now, we're not in a good place for that.
Your optimism, I don't know if it's shared by a lot of people these days. Let's move on to another topic, because there is indication that the Biden administration is gearing up to introduce a potential $3 trillion infrastructure plan. The New York Times reports it would include a jobs package as well as domestic policy priorities like free community college, universal pre-kindergarten, with hundreds of billions of dollars to repair the country's streets, bridges, waterways, and railroads, certainly traditional infrastructure, $400 billion potentially to fight climate change. This would definitely be a big approach. What part of this, if any, could you go along with the Democrats?
Well, this is where I'm a little disappointed, because I was hoping and hopeful that we could actually do infrastructure together. This sounds like this is infrastructure plus every other kind of Democratic dream proposal that they can do. And of course, you're not going to have any bipartisan support on that, because there are fundamental differences in the parties. That's why we have Washington, D.C. to go debate. So I think getting an infrastructure bill done could be done. The question is, if you're just going to say we're going to spend $3 trillion and raise corporate taxes, when, by the way, prior to the corporate tax cut, we had companies leaving the United States and going elsewhere. That's not happening anymore. You're not going to get a bipartisan solution. But if we can get to the point, and I think I'm an ever optimist, I think we can, where we just talk about the infrastructure piece of this and how to fund it, then I think, if not all of my colleagues or even most of them, a significant number of us be willing to work with the Democrats on this issue of infrastructure.
Can you fund infrastructure, though, with raising some taxes, perhaps corporate taxes?
I think there's going to have to be an increase in how we fund it. I don't like the idea of just going to the corporate tax well, because, again, that's when you run into, now these companies are going to start leaving for lower tax areas. We could be mad about that, but you're not going to be able to stop it. But I think things like, look, the federal gas tax has been the same since 1995. Every family is spending about half of what they used to use the interstate system, because cars get better gas mileage and you know, stuff costs more now. So I think having a discussion on that, or like how to charge electrical vehicles, for instance, so you basically pay for what you use. That's a fiscally conservative way to do it. not just saying we're going to, soak the corporations or the rich or whoever at the moment.
We're just getting started with Adam Kinzinger coming up. Testing democracy, how the congressman sees the state of the Republican Party. For the record. We're back with Illinois Congressman Adam Kinzinger. You took a bold stance earlier this year when you voted to impeach Donald Trump after the attack on the Capitol. You saw some serious blowback from that. Some even came from members of your own family, I understand. There was a time when George W. Bush tried to make the case that the Republicans were a big tent party. The backlash you got seems to counter that idea. What do you think about the state of your party?
I think the state's in a bad place. I mean, we may be able to win elections. We may win the House back in 2 years. But the health of a party is not necessarily can you just win an election. It's what are you fighting for? Are you bringing people together? Are you actually inspiring a vision versus just stoking fears? And I would say, and I would argue that we haven't done a good job of that. When we had what happened on January 6th, I mean, I think for me, it was an easy decision to vote to impeach the president because I have no doubt that not just on the 6th at the rally, but the days and months and frankly years prior building the narrative of a stolen election, it's really dangerous to democracies. We just saw the early stage of that on the 6th and we survived that. But I think as a party, we have to kind of remember, look, we are the inspirational party of the past. And it doesn't mean we have to go back to using the same, language of like Ronald Reagan, but take those 21st century problems with 21st century solutions. And it's why I started, frankly, Country First, is country1st.com, to say, let's take our party back. Let's fight for solutions. Let's get answers here. And unfortunately, I don't think we're on the track for that right now.
Let's talk about that track because we've seen the party, some members of the party embrace members who support conspiracy theories like QAnon. What do you do about that?
You have to call it out. I mean, not just supporting QAnon, but when you get into members of Congress that are speaking at groups with, racist ties. Look, you can't stop anybody from calling themselves a Republican. You can't stop anybody from running as a Republican or a Democrat if they can get the signatures and get on the ballot. What you can, though, do as a party is denounce that and say we don't accept them as a Republican or as a Democrat, because that's where a party can make that decision. And right now we talk about being a big tent party, but again, the idea that somebody that is a conservative but takes a stand impeaching Donald Trump is not welcome, but yet we're going to welcome all these ideologies that are destructive to, the Constitution. I think when we get the distance of time and out of the emotion of it, we're going to look back and say, hopefully we came out of that and now focus on solutions like how to create a more efficient government, give people opportunity, things like that.
And to be fair, this isn't just a Republican problem because Democrats go after their own as well for not adhering to the party line strictly. Senator Joe Manchin comes to mind currently for the Democrats, and it seems both parties put up these walls that make it virtually impossible to compromise on big legislation. Like we saw in the 70s and 80s, there was compromise. How much is that strict partisanship from both Democrats and Republicans setting the tone for the rest of the country at large?
It's been a big problem, and I think, that's why half of the country right now identifies as an independent because they don't feel like they belong to either party. And I think what's happened is we've learned, we being generically politicians, that you can raise a lot of money on fear, and you can raise a lot of money on attacking somebody in your own party as not sufficiently conservative or not fighting enough, or in the Democrats not sufficiently progressive. And you can raise a ton of money on that, so incumbents then are tempted to kind of match that so they can stay in office. And I think that's a big problem. And I think the key to fixing that is not just what members of Congress do, but it's people waking up and saying, look, voting in primaries, you may not like the primary system, but it exists right now. Voting in primaries is important, and voting for people that aren't going to scare you to death, but are actually going to give you a vision. Because after all, we do live in a great country and a great time to be alive, and we should reflect that in our leadership.
Congressman Adam Kinzinger, thanks so much for the conversation. We certainly hope to have you back on the program. Be safe.